This thing, I think, and maybe it's not Baptist, but Southern, we say, "Oh, God bless her soul." Have you heard that before? And that's really saying that you just can't help that person. You know, that's really what we're saying. God bless her soul. You know, you'll say something negative, and then at the end of it, you say, "Well, bless her soul." You know, she can't dress to save her life, but God bless her soul. You know. Whatever the case may be, you know, we just kind of tag that on the end so it sounds like we're being positive or like we're, you know, really kind of being Christian, but really we're not. You know, we're slotting them, we're putting them in a category, we're judging them based on whatever category we've put out there. And the other one that we do all the time, and we don't do this one externally as much like the first two, but we do it internally, is we look at somebody and we go, "Oh, well, their sin's worse than mine, so I'm okay." You know? Did you hear about them? Oh my gosh, man, that's crazy. And so I'm okay because I feel better about myself because I'm not doing the same things they're doing, or I'm not caught in the same things they're caught in, or you know what I mean? And so I feel a little bit cleaner because I'm not as deep in the river as they are, you know? I'm still in it. Of course I'm in it, but I'm not up to my neck, you know. And so we pass it off that way. And we judge. We get a pecking order going. And I'm not as far out as you are. And so I feel better about myself. The other side of it is from a church perspective or a leadership perspective or whatever you want to call it. You know, we say, well, in order for you to be part of us, then you got to look like this, act like this, talk like this, and you can't do this, and you can't do this, and you can't do this. And so we have these rules set up, and as long as you abide by those rules, then everything's cool. But if you don't, if you're outside of those things, then there's a mark on you, a judgment on you, and you can't be. You're excluded from whatever's going on because of this issue or that issue. I was a part of a church one time, and we were talking about all different kinds of stuff in a church board meeting, and one of the issues, a real issue, I'm not making this up, this is a real issue, was that they didn't want to put like cigarette butt cans outside the church. But we had a whole bunch of people that were smoking, which, whatever, you know what I mean? But they didn't want to put the butt cans out there because it would look bad. I'm like, what? What? I don't understand. I don't get it. But in that meeting, what was happening is that group of people was judging that other group of people and saying, "Hey, we don't want people to know that you people come, and so we're not going to advertise that or support that or, you know, do anything to help you in that, and so, you know, you're just on your own." And I walked out of that board meeting going, "Oh my gosh, man, really?" Everybody comes from a different space. Everybody's got whatever. Who cares? It's not my job to do that. It's not my job to deal in that. It's my job to love you. Anyway, all of these things are done from a selfish point of view, and I want to suggest to you this morning that they are void of love. That they happen outside of that. Because it's a separation, it's a pushback, it's a categorization, and we separate and we divide and we push all that out, and that's just not what love does. That's just not the characteristics of love. When you look it up, that's not love. But we have a way of wanting to make myself seem okay. And so if I draw the attention to you, then the focus isn't on me anymore. You know what I mean? It's kind of like junior high school. And I think junior high school is the worst. It's like the meanest age group of kids. ever in the history of man, in my opinion, because junior high, they're just mean. You know what I mean? They're just mean. You're trying to figure out your humor. You're trying to figure out where your place is, and you're trying to figure out all that stuff, and there's no room for error. And you get made fun of at every drop of the hat. I mean, that's just the way it is. And so if I can point my finger at your faults, then I'm not going to be the target anymore. You know, that's junior high mentality right there. And so we want to draw the attention to everybody else's screw-ups and laugh with them. And so you'll laugh with me. So now, you know, the attention's somewhere else and we're on a team, and I feel safe in doing that. But sometimes we carry that over into our adult lives unknowingly. And that's not love. That's just not the way it is. It's always done, that stuff is done through selfish motive, and I believe the root of that is fear, and we're afraid. We're afraid that we will be excluded. We're afraid that we're not going to measure up. We're afraid that it's not going to work. That you're going to see me for who I really am, and if you do that, if you see me for who I really am, then you probably won't like me, and if you don't like me, then you'll exclude me, and then I'm on my own again. So we want to draw the attention everywhere else. And I'm going to build a shield up here to protect myself because of this issue that Jesus addresses right here of judging others. And he's pretty blunt about it. I was talking with Ose several months ago now, and I have a necklace that I wear. It's a key necklace, and on it says fearless. That's kind of my word for the year. And out of that, I have that key because I really want to operate not out of fear. You know what I mean? I don't want to operate in that realm this year. It's kind of my focus. And so the decisions I make, the things I do, I don't want them to be influenced by fear. I want them to be influenced by God and by direction, by purpose. You know what I mean? And so that's where I'm coming from. And then talking with Ose, he said, oh, I wish I could have his accent, but I can't. I'm all screwed up. But he said, oh, brother, do you know what the opposite of fear is? And I was like, well, courage. He goes, no, brother, no. He said, the opposite of fear is perfect love. Because perfect love drives out fear. And that's 1 John 4:18. There is no fear in love, but perfect love drives out fear. Because fear expects punishment. And in that moment, it's like a light bulb came on. I was like, oh, you're exactly right. If there's love, if there's perfect love, then there's no fear in that. If you love me, if I love you, then there's no fear in me exposing who I am because you love me. And you're going to support me. But fear is kind of a big enemy. I don't know if it is of yours, it is of mine. And that's why I'm kind of trying to focus on getting rid of it. Operating in a different mode, but we do a lot of things out of fear. Fear of being exposed, fear of being, looked at, judged, different things. But Jesus in Matthew chapter 5, just a couple of chapters before this, instructs us to love our enemies, pray for those who persecute us. But let's go back to Matthew chapter 7, verse 2. I got 3 points because that's what I do. So this is number 1. Judging invites judgment. Jesus says, do not judge, or you too will be judged. It invites judgment. In the same way you judge others, you're going to be judged. With the same measure you use to judge someone else, it's going to be measured back to you. And so, how does that work in my mind? How does that flesh out in my life? I don't want to judge, but I'm fearful as well. And so I try to ride that line. But when we judge others, it never works out. Because we have no righteousness of our own. It all comes from God. So it's hypocritically, it's self-righteously, because we don't have it. And with the measure we use, it'll be measured back to us. And so in essence, what he's saying is that we are determining the severity of our own judgment. And the way that I judge you, I don't want to judge. I don't want to put people in categories. I don't want to say, these people are good, these people are bad. When I was in my 20s, it was very easy for me to do that. Everything was black and white, you know what I mean? Everything was cut and dry. You're good, you're bad, you're good, you're bad. You know, you just file them through me, I'll tell you everybody where everybody lands, you know? But the older I get, the more I understand that that's not the way it is, and if it is, it's not my job to do that anyway. It's my job to love you. That's what I'm supposed to do. That's what I'm put here for. It's not to divide up. It's not to put into categories. It's not to compare lives. I'm here to love you. Period. Number one, judging invites judgment. Number two is an impaired judgment. Matthew 3 through 5. Why do you look at the speck of the sawdust in your brother's eye and pay no attention to the plank in your own eye? Number one thing that I want to bring out in here is that I have no basis to judge someone else if I haven't dealt with my own issues. How can I judge you if I've got issues? That's what Jesus is saying right here. If you've got issues in your own life, how can you categorize someone else? How can you judge someone else? You can't do it. Because you've got your own issues. You can't see clearly to help anybody else because you haven't dealt with your own. And we're famous for doing that. Humans are famous for doing that. Church people are famous for doing that. We hide away the issues that we have in our life. We don't want anybody to see them. We do things in secret. We hope nobody sees. But I'll tell you what your problem is. Right? No. No. We have no basis for judgment if we haven't dealt with our own issues. There's a story of Jesus in John chapter 8, verses 3 through 11. And he's hanging out, and the Jewish rulers of the day are trying to trick him into doing something wrong. And so they bring a woman to him that has been caught in adultery. And they bring this woman to him, and he says, hey, Jesus, this woman was caught in adultery. According to the law of Moses, she's got to be stoned to death. What do you say? And they're trying to lay a trap for him. And he just kind of reaches down and draws in the dirt. And they're frustrated because he's not answering. So they try to get his attention again. Hey, what do you say? And Jesus kind of looks up at him, looks him in the eye, and says, well, the person who's never sinned, you pick up the first stone and throw it. And he's just looking at him. And they know. They haven't dealt with their own issues, so they can't deal with hers. So one by one, they just start filing off, taking off. They're not there anymore. Until finally no one's standing there anymore. There's not a crowd of people. And Jesus looks at her and says, hey, where are your accusers now? She said, they're gone. He said, well, I don't accuse you either. Go and lead your life of sin. Wow. Wow. That's the greatest example I can think of how I'm supposed to interact with people. Of how I'm supposed to treat people. Regardless of your sin, regardless of what you've got going on. It's not my job. My job is to love you. And out of that love, we can deal with issues. We can deal with things. We can make things right. We can hand things over to Jesus. We can watch his blood wash over us and make us new out of that love. But as long as we categorize, as long as we split things up, as long as we chart out this pecking order, it's not going to happen. Because you're slaughtered. You've been judged. You've been lined up. You've been set right. Why is it easier to cast a negative light on someone else instead of extending them grace? And again, as long as everybody's looking at you, I'm not the target. Only when we've done the hard work of removing our own plank will we see clearly and have enough compassion to help someone else. If I don't know where you're coming from, it's hard for me to be compassionate. If I've never been there, it's hard for me to understand. But you know what? If I've dealt with my own junk, if I've dealt with my own junk, my own sin, my own stuff, then it's pretty easy for me to help you deal with yours. Because I would have compassion, because I know how difficult it is. That's why AA is such a big deal. Because those guys have compassion with the guys that are trying to deal with it. The guys that have been sober for a long time have a lot of compassion for the guys who are just trying to get sober because they've been there. They know what hard work it is. They understand it. That's why they're there for each other. Christy's uncle, who died a couple of years ago, was big time into that. And he would drop whatever he was doing, drive however many hours he needed to drive to be with somebody that night. Didn't matter. Why? Because he knew how hard it was. Because he dealt with his own demons. When we deal with our own demons, then we have compassion enough that we can help somebody else. But when we stuff our own demons, when we pretend they're not there, when we try to hide them back there behind that wall, then we don't have compassion for anybody else. It's hard for us to do that. Almost impossible. Because we haven't dealt with our own. So we got to deal with our own. So to extend mercy, we've got to receive mercy first. Then we have it to extend. Then we have it to give somebody else if we've received it. Last thing, number 3. We got to match the lesson with the learner. When I was a kid, I was 13 years old, and it was coming to be Christmas time, and the only thing I wanted in the whole world was a Skyway bicycle. That's it. That's all I wanted. It had a teardrop-shaped frame. It was brand new race bike that was out there, and they had Z-rims. I'm sure nobody even remembers what Z-rims are. You don't know what they are, but they had Z-rims, which were like a composite material rim. And then they had, spokes in there that were different colors, and it matched the bike. And they had that down there at the swing shop on Prince. And I wanted that bike so bad, I couldn't even see straight. That's all I wanted. And so for a long time, I would say, "Hey, Dad, you want to meet me at the swing shop after work? I need to show you something." "Hey, Mom, you want to drop me off at the swing shop? And by the way, while we're here, you want to come inside? I need to show you something." And I just bugged him about it for forever. I took pictures of it. I had tore pictures out of magazines. I mean, I did everything I knew how to do to plant the seed that this is what I want for Christmas, right? And I did everything. So Christmas Day comes, and my sisters are there, and my nephew's there, who's like 3 years old, and everything's cool. And so we're going through all the presents and stuff, and there's a present behind the couch, and that's it. That's it. I know that's it. It's a big box. It's right there. I know it's there. So I'm happy. Everything's good. Let me pass out the gifts to everybody else. Like, come on, everybody open them, because we need to get to the main thing. I'm doing all this stuff. And so we get down to the end, and the big present has my nephew's name on it. And I know that that's a ploy, right? Because I know that's mine. And so we get down to the end of it, and my dad goes, "Hey, Breck, why don't you come over here and help me open Lane's gift?" And I'm like, "All right, cool." So I'm over there, and we rip it all off in the box. On the box, it has a picture of a swing set. And I'm like, "You gotta be kidding me. You're kidding me." And I just kind of looked at him and stone-faced, man. And he's like, "Boom, this is it." And I'm like, looking around, where's my bike? It's got to be here somewhere. I know it's the only thing I've asked for ever. And so I scout around the house. I look in the garage. I'm doing everything. No bike. So we go through breakfast and everything, and we're done with breakfast. And my dad goes, "Hey, why don't you get that swing set out and help me set it up in the backyard for Lane?" I'm ticked. I'm mad. I don't want to set up a stinking swing set in the backyard for Lane. I don't want to. I want my bike. And so grab the box and take it outside, ripping it open and tape it, get it open, and I whip it open and my bike's there. And I'm like, "Hey-oh, hey-oh, hey-oh." Oh, gosh. Hate it when that happens. You feel like a real butthole. But, it was my bike. But you got to match the lesson with the learner. In other words, you don't give china to a kid to make mud pies out in the field. You don't do that. You give them plasticware. You don't give a kid a real gun and tell them to go play war. You don't do that. You give them a stick. Because that could be a sword too, You got to match the lesson with the learner. And the lesson that my dad taught me that day was, you better be thankful for everything you get, because you might not get what you want. But you got to match the lesson with the learner, or they don't understand the value of the gift. The teaching should be given in accordance with the spiritual capacity of the learner. That's what Jesus is talking about. So when you've done the hard work of dealing with your own stuff and you go to deal with someone else, you got to make sure that what we're teaching matches who they are. Because we all come from different spaces. We all come from different backgrounds. We're all at different places in our spiritual walk. We're all at different places in hearing God's voice. And if I haven't done the hard work of dealing with myself, how can I help you hear God's voice if I can't hear him myself? How can I help you do that if I haven't done my own stuff? But if I've done my own hard work, then I'm sensitive enough to you and your condition and your place and the stuff that you're dealing with, where you're coming from, that I can sit across from you and allow God to speak to me and match the lesson with the learner. But I got to deal with my own stuff first. When we've done that, then I can sit across from you. I wrote down here, an atheist isn't ready for an exegetical Bible study. They're not ready. That person needs to see the love of Jesus in you. They need to see it. They need to experience it. They're not ready for that. They're not ready to sit down and start cross-referencing the Bible, something that they don't believe in. They need to find the love of Jesus. They need to see it and experience it. So what does this have to do with judging others? Sometimes we judge others as quote-unquote sinners, and we try to force them to change, or we cut them off completely. And our judgment of them overrides the sweet movement of the Holy Spirit. Guys and ladies, the whole issue that Jesus is trying to get across to us through this short passage in the Sermon on the Mount is that we're not supposed to judge. That's not our job. It's not our job to point out the issues in someone else's life. It's not our job to walk up to them and say, hey man, you know that what you're doing isn't right. It's not our job. It's not our job to categorize people and split them out and say, oh, well, you know, you really don't belong here because you this, and this. No, it's not our job. It's not our job to create a pecking order to make ourselves feel better because we're not as bad as somebody else. It's not our job. Our job is to love the person that you're sitting next to, love the person that you're sitting across from, love the person that you work with. That's our job. So that they can see Jesus in us, so that our own demons are dealt with, so that our own sin is dealt with. So when we do get the chance to sit across from them and talk to them about the love of God, we can do that with compassion and kindness. We can do that with the Spirit of God working through our lives because there is no judgment there. That's our job. Let's not get caught in this, ever. I don't want to ever be caught in this. I don't want myself, I don't want our church, I don't want anybody to be caught in this, to feel like they're judged because of who they are or what they're dealing with or what they're walking through. That's not our job. What I want people to know about me, what I want them to know when they walk out of that door, what I want them to say was, man, I've been loved in that place. I was loved by that person. He cared about me. They cared about me. They didn't bring up my issues. They didn't try to slam me because of what I'm dealing with or what I look like or what the case may be. They just loved me. They just treated me like I was one of theirs. Because that's what Jesus is talking about. Not just me. But it takes conscious effort. As we go into some reflection time, the Holy of Holies, and just spend a little bit of time with God, I just want you to ask yourself this morning, A, is there anything in my life that I haven't dealt with? Is there anything in my life that I need to deal with before I can start helping somebody else? And God, what is that? Bring it to our attention so that we can hand it over to Him. Second thing I want us to begin to talk to God about today is, God, is there any judgment in me? Am I guilty of that in any way? And if so, point that out to me and show me what that is so that I can let it go. And if apologies need to be made, then I'm going to make those apologies this afternoon. Let's get into that place. Remember that our job is to love, not to judge.